I really have to talk about this because it's such a good example of what's going on in the press. Yesterday, Trump came out to the Rose Garden and he started to go into his speech. And the joke is, there used to be this thing they would call the Rose Garden strategy. And the Rose Garden strategy is where the president comes out and he does things that only the president can do. So he makes his opponent look weak and irrelevant, right? But Trump redefined the Rose Garden strategy by actually coming out and giving a campaign speech for about 50 minutes or over an hour by the time he was finished. He went after Biden, and he went after Biden's policies, his new policies that he's announced that are he is talking about something like $7 trillion in leftist spending. And you can say, well, the right has been spending like a drunken sailor for years. And that's absolutely true. We've been completely irresponsible. We've lost all authority on the question of fiscal responsibility. That's true. But the left spending is doubly bad because it not only spends on things that shouldn't be spent on, it also just sucks all the power and money out of the room from the entrepreneurs who want to build something new. So let's hear something about what Trump said about Biden. Let's take the one from 11, just a kind of montage of what he was saying.
Biden was here for 47 years. 8 years, the last 8 years, not long ago, as vice president, he said 1 in 5 miles of our highways are still in poor condition. Well, we're doing a good job on highways, but why didn't he fix them? Tens of thousands of bridges are in disrepair and on the verge of collapse. Well, it's probably not a right number, but we have bridges that should have been fixed. Why didn't he fix them? High-speed broadband. We want high-speed broadband. Well, why didn't he get it? 3 years ago is not a long time.
So the press went insane because he's using the Rose Garden for a campaign tactic. Now listen, Obama did all kinds of stuff like this. I mean, he had the guy, the Miranda, the guy who did Hamilton at the White House and all this. All presidents do this to some degree. Al Gore, of course, was using the White House for campaigning. But Brett Baier made this point on Fox News that if Democrats did this, if a Democrat president like Obama did this from the Rose Garden, we on the right would get upset about it. And I think that's absolutely true. We on the right would get upset about it. But here's the difference. We wouldn't have a press that would do this. We would not have people pretending to be reporters who did what Jim, look at me, I'm Jim Acosta did. Here's Jim's absolutely objective account of what happened.
We are down to Kool-Aid drinkers and next of kin here at the Trump White House. There are no more adults who will level with the president and tell him he can't deliver a rally-like rant in the Rose Garden as he did earlier this evening. The reason why that event that took place in the Rose Garden was so much like a rally is because of the way he just went into the lies, the myths, and the truth stretching that he does out on the campaign trail.
So while it's true that we on the right would have attacked Obama and said essentially what Jim, look at me, I'm Jim Acosta said, we wouldn't have Jim, look at me, I'm Jim Acosta on CNN saying those things because he's a partisan hack. It is one thing for Democrats and Republicans to go after one another. That's what they're supposed to do. That's democratic politics. You're supposed to fight it out, and each one's supposed to go to fight your corner. But Jim, look at me, I'm Jim Acosta, and his crappy station, CNN, should be refereeing that fight, not throwing punches in that fight. And that's what Jim, look at me, I'm Jim Acosta, doesn't understand about what his job is. I mean, maybe he does understand it and he doesn't care because he's just a liar. But this is the thing, that this is the important thing. And when I was talking to Senator Ted Cruz yesterday, and he said, we're very bad at narrative, this is part of the problem. We're not just bad at narrative, we're bad at constructing things that will put forward our narrative and fighting back. And instead, we've got this horrible CNN, which is just let's take a look at the coverage. Let me just show you the coverage, a little montage of the coverage from CNN of Trump's press conference. Just play that montage.
How badly is he failing right now in dealing with this spiraling crisis?
He's doing terribly. I mean, the president gets an F in terms of the handling of this global pandemic. You see in some of these states across the country, the cases are going up.
He was rambling all over the place, not expressing coherent thoughts for the most part. And then secondly, he avoided the issue that is convulsing the country right now,
which is the coronavirus. This has now been in the United States for half of a year. And the president has not shown any indication in the last few days that he's got a plan for ameliorating this brush fire.
So this is, to me, this is really interesting. I mean, now that we see this, and I've harped on this a lot, but it's worth talking about. Now that we see that, for instance, the hysteria, the utter hysteria about Christine Blasey Ford when she attacked Brett Kavanaugh, the utter hysteria about that suddenly vanished when Tara Reade said that Joe Biden had digitally raped her. Suddenly that hysteria, the Believe Women stuff, it all vanished. It all went away. Now we see this in front of us. And this is something that Trump has accomplished. Whether he's accomplished it on purpose or whether it's just the reaction to him is a fair, open question. But the fact that he was elevated to the presidency, the fact that this total outsider was elevated to the presidency, it shows you that we had the sense, or at least the people who voted for him had the sense that the institutions had completely failed. The institutions have totally failed. Really, in some ways, the only institution that's working is leftism, because leftism is a form of decay, and decay is always working. Leftism is something that happens to societies as they get older. It's interesting. I was just reading a mystery story from 1948, and it had all of the same from Britain. It was a British mystery story from 1948. Had all of the same trends that are going on here back then in 1948, and shortly thereafter, Britain lost its empire. Britain lost its economy for 30 years. Didn't have a good economy after the war, not because the Germans had created so much damage, but because they went socialist, because they went left, and it really destroyed their economy until Margaret Thatcher really hobbled the unions a little bit and started to bring it back. So these are, the left always works because the left is downhill. We can always go downhill. You can always go downhill. Going uphill, you have to have a plan. You have to have a purpose. You have to fight the gravity and keep walking. So one of the things is, while Trump was doing this, Biden gave a speech as well. He gave it to an empty room. He didn't take any questions from the press. There were a couple of people in the room, like 5 or 6 people, spread out to keep from getting each other sick. But he did put forward one really interesting plan. You have to listen to this carefully. This is cut number 1.
To get our people to work and our kids to school safely, to get our kids to market swiftly, to power a clean energy revolution in this country, we need to modernize America's infrastructure.
So, I don't know. We got to get our kids to market. I'm not sure whether Biden is a cannibal now. Like, what does it mean? Are we taking our kids to market like pigs, or are we selling them into slavery? Is this like our version of slavery reparation? We're now going to sell our children into slavery to make up for selling other people's children. I have no idea what the guy is talking about. He's reading off a prompter. The guy is reading off a prompter, but he did introduce a $2 trillion plan to address climate change, and it's everything you would think. But here's the thing about Joe Biden, and this is just openly being discussed. This was on Twitter, and it was taken down from Twitter because once it started to be shared around. This is Angela Davis. She is a longtime communist. She was accused of felony murder, I believe. I think she got off, but she is a real radical. She is on Putin's propaganda channel, RT, Russian television. And here is what she says about Joe Biden. This is the first Angela Davis clip.
I don't see this election as being about choosing a candidate who will be able to lead us in the right direction. It will be about choosing a candidate who can be most effectively pressured into allowing more space for the evolving anti-racist movement. Biden is very problematic in many ways. He is not only in terms of his past and the role that he played in pushing toward mass incarceration, but he has indicated that he is opposed to disbanding the police. And this is definitely what we need. We need to reconceptualize the very notion of public safety.
So what she's saying is Biden isn't radical enough, but don't worry, he's just a puppet who will be pushed aside and pressured from the left. And that's the thing. When you look at Trump at some level, you're not just looking at Donald Trump, you're looking at the failure of our institutions. When you look at Biden, you're looking at the one institution that's still working, namely decay, namely leftism. This video is sponsored by Blink Sale. the revolutionary invoicing software for contractors and small businesses. Spend less time billing and more time making bank with Blink Sale. Get a free trial at the link in the video description. I hope you enjoyed that clip from The Andrew Klavan Show. If you did, go ahead and hit the subscribe button so you stay up to date on all our future content.